Hey everyone, welcome to the Twitter space today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Xandra and I'm the community manager at CharmVerse. For those of you not familiar, CharmVerse is a Web3 community platform for managing members, coordinating tasks, facilitating decisions, and holding each other accountable. Members sign in with crypto wallets and gain access via community tokens and NFTs. And it brings together onboarding, payment management, proposals, project trackers, and data repositories all in one place. If you haven't checked us out yet, please do so after this space. I'm also going to encourage our listeners to share the space so we can get some more people in here. So today, I'm really excited to be talking with Dr. Michael Fischer of DB DAO. Hi, Michael.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going well. Thanks for taking the time to join me.
Thanks for having us. Me.
So you are, last time I saw you, we were at DevCon at a brunch that CharmVerse was hosting. Thanks for coming to that too. It was nice to meet you in person.
Yes, likewise. Big fan of the CharmVerse team. And,
love that.
Met Alex through you. I met you through Alex, who started the company or co-founded the company in New York.
Nice. Do you live in New York? Are you based there?
Yes, I live in New York, and Alex, we've hosted these like crypto dinners in New York, and I think that's how I got connected to Alex initially.
Nice. And I believe you two are giving a presentation. Is it tomorrow at DeSci San Francisco, right?
Yeah. So if anyone is in the Bay Area or San Francisco as part of SF Tech Week, there is a DeSci conference tomorrow, Thursday, and I think it's DeSciSF.xyz is the address to find out more info. So that's DeSciSF.xyz, and it's tomorrow. And then also the day after, we're hosting a DeSci picnic in Dolores Park at 3:30. So if anyone is in the audience is in the Bay Area, make sure to consider coming to that.
Yeah, definitely. Go check it out. It's going to be a good one.
Yes.
Yeah. So are you already in San Francisco? Or are you traveling today? What's your deal?
Yeah, in San Francisco, and meeting Alex later today.
Nice. I'm jealous. I wish I were.
Next.
So let's get into DB DAO, because as I've been digging into this protocol, I really like what you're doing over there. So DB DAO is a protocol for community-owned databases. And how about, Michael, you break down what that means for anyone that doesn't know?
Yeah. So basically, we were looking into the whole sort of space of what it takes to build a application for Web 2 for like a web app, and we saw that there was like storage was there's a Web 2 and Web 3 equivalent for almost everything. For like storage, there was S3 on Web 2, and on Web 3 there was IPFS. For hosting, you could use Vercel for Web 2 and Fleek for Web 3. There was DNS for Web 2, ENS for Web 3. If you wanted to run code, you could do AWS Lambda. For Web 3, you could do smart contracts. But for Web 2, there was like, MongoDB, Firebase. And what we realized was that there should be like a Web 3 equivalent for a database. And so we came up with this idea for DB DAO, where it's kind of like the Firebase for Web 3. And so how does that work is like, the database takes in, it's the core part of many applications. It's where they store the data. And there's a lot of things you could do around it, around authentication. So managing who can see what in a Web 3 native way. So incorporating that with DIDs and sign in with Ethereum, and data ownership in terms of everything should be an NFT, how the database is managed, like a DAO, and how the data is monetized. These are sort of all things that really use some of the superpowers of Web 3, and we could sort of natively bring them into a database, and then give developers who are building these types of applications sort of the same look and feel, not because there's but because it works really well in terms of like an interface that is SQL or GraphQL queryable, and making like a drop-in replacement for sort of an existing web app, but then bring in all this native functionality around Web3. And the reason you want that is so that you can interoperate with the greater ecosystem. Like, we are a very modular system, and you want to plug in different sort of Web3 native things, but also to help monetize the data. So one of the big driving use cases of DB DAO is giving users partial equity over the data that they create. So if you are on a social platform, we think the future is like when you have a really popular post on Twitter or Instagram or any of these other platforms, you should be entitled to a percentage of that income that post generates. And so we sort of incorporated that in at the database layer. And the idea is that any web app that pays their users will have a significant competitive advantage over a web app that doesn't pay their users.
I love that. So you're allowing people to monetize their content, curators, and we'll talk about scouts, another role that you have, can assemble these on-chain databases.
Exactly. Yes.
Right? And you have a social contract. And so is that like a smart contract?
Yes, it is. It is both. I love that term. It is both a social contract, which is how the US is based, and it's also a smart contract. So the way the monetization works is when you submit to a database, what you're actually doing is you're minting an NFT. It's called an 1155 NFT, ERC 1155 NFT, which basically means it's like you can mint it for less money than it would cost otherwise on like a 721. And then you're proposing, and inside that NFT is your data, which usually takes the form of a JSON object, but it could be many different types of things. And then you mint it, you own it, and then you propose it to entering a database. And once it is accepted or rejected from that database, then say a database earns $100, then each person can sort of get a cut of that $100 that comes in. So the database, let's say, it monetizes through advertisements or through subscriptions or anything else. And then what happens is we take a cut, and then the person who organized the database, who we call the curator, they take a cut, and the people who contribute to the database also get a cut. And then that's sort of how it monetizes. There's another interesting thing here of how the mechanism design works. And the idea is, like, if you're contributing data to a database, what happens is that you're incentivized to get as many rows in that database as possible. Now, if there's a malicious actor out there, what can happen is they are going to say, okay, I want to spam the database with as much content as possible. And so what we want to do is we want to try and disincentivize that. And so what you have to do is when you submit a row to the database, you have to pay like 50 cents as a deposit on that row. And if your data is accepted into the row, you get your 50 cents back. But if your data is rejected, then that money gets burned and goes into the rewards of the database. And the reason you want this is it maintains a higher quality of data than you would get otherwise. And yeah, so that's kind of like how the mechanism design here works. And yeah.
So since you went towards that, I was a little further on, but I want to jump on that. So it's essentially you're gamifying the protocol, right? Like, you have this database that, say, the curator puts together. You have someone else that wants to add a row, but they have to pay a token or the 50 cents or whatever you're saying. And then if someone says, no, never mind, I don't want that, they kind of need to double down that initial token amount, right? And now pay 2 tokens to have it removed?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And then, so it sounds like this could go back and forth for a while.
Yes, exactly. So it's gamifying the process and distributing the curation to many different types of people. So The benefit here is that it scales the content moderation and curation of large data sets, and then also it incentivizes people to do the hard work of curating data. One of the things that is tricky when creating a data set is figuring out what should or shouldn't be included in the database. And traditionally, that isn't paid. So the problem is that when you don't pay it, you sort of get low quality stuff. And the idea here is that if we pay people to do this like heavy lifting of curating data, then you can, that'll create a lot of value. It's just one person who does it once, and then everyone can share in the cost of that, as opposed to each person having to scroll through endless posts. I mean, that's sort of the main value that Google does. Google has indexed billions of pages, but their value add is curating and algorithmically the top 1 or 2 pages, and people find that very valuable, willing to pay for it.
Yeah. So are you finding that this leads to more engagement, kind of that gamification? Is it more engagement within
Yeah,
DAO?
exactly. It leads to different people being able to contribute in different ways. So, maybe everyone doesn't want to be a curator. Maybe some people want to contribute just data, but maybe some people don't want to contribute data at all. They just want to help curate data. So I think it leads to many different types of ways in which people can engage with a data set. And it's kind of similar to like on Reddit, where some people want to post, some people want to like start a Reddit subreddit, some people want to post on Reddit, some people want to upvote, downvote, some people want to comment, some people just want to view. And so there's different ways that people can engage in the curation process, which I think is great.
Absolutely. Okay, so you touched on it a bit, but let's talk real life examples, right? Like you mentioned Google search engine. That could be an example, right?
Yeah. So,
another one that you had mentioned just when I was doing my research, that since election day is right around the corner, you could have like a curated voting guide.
Yeah, there's so many different examples of curations that could happen. One that we're working on now that we're very excited about is to do like a decentralized clinical trial. So right now, clinical trials are done in a very centralized way using the FDA, and there's a long process around who can get in and how they're conducted, which is great for certain types of science and medicine. But I think there's another way of doing it where instead of, so we're working with like Lab DAO and potentially Side DAO to do this. But there's another way of thinking about how clinical trials could take place, is that it's kind of like the Wikipedia version of clinical trial, where you don't need to be an expert in Encyclopedia Britannica. Anyone can contribute to Wikipedia, and you get a different data set than what is available on Encyclopedia Britannica. And in the same way, the FDA and drug companies create a specific data set. We can create a different type of data set around how different types of drugs and people, what are the side effects, what are the benefits of it. So we're working on this like distributed clinical trial on psychedelics and seeing, what sort of data we can glean when we open up the ability for anyone to contribute. Of course, this will lead to a very different type of data set with different problems. And so we're going to have to be more careful around cleaning the data. But our hope is that it will open it up to a broader audience. Then, there's other things like job boards and paying. And so the thing that's interesting about the clinical trial is that anyone who contributes to it and has their data accepted gets a bit of money, so that you're now incentivized in a very low barrier way to contribute your experience, maybe that you've just had, without having to go through all of the hoops that you would traditionally have. We're also doing job boards and news sites and like zeitgeists of digital assets online. certificate authorities for various web apps. So if you're on, around the new Doge chain, like let's say you're looking for a DEX or an NFT swapping platform or any sort of DeFi protocol, you might want to know what are the legitimate things that you might want to either for discovery, figure out which applications are there. You might want to know the legitimate ones. So we're building these sort of zeitgeists for different like applications that exist in the Web3 ecosystem. So basically, like the opportunity is pretty open in terms of like where this could be useful. As I mentioned, we're working on some, but then also have some things in the pipeline. And of course, we always are looking to engage with the broader community. So we've released a white label app that can be downloaded and forked on our GitHub. So if you have an idea of something, of a data set that you want to curate, either alone or as part of a community, I'd encourage you to go to our GitHub, which is on our website, dbdao.xyz, and fork that and play around with it.
Yeah, I mean, there seems to be a ton of benefits of this community-owned database idea, right? Sounds like it's been a huge success thus far.
Yes, exactly.
And so you're kind of combining this community-owned database along with DeSci. Is this part of your talk tomorrow?
Yeah, so one of the markets that we're really trying to focus on is DeSci, because I think that there's going to be a lot of value that's created in scientific discovery and allowing people to collaborate on large data sets. And this will create like what I call like type 1 value, where DeFi created, allowed people to swap and move things around, but I don't think that and when you discover a new molecule or when you allow people to collaborate in new ways, you're actually like creating new information or allowing new insights to be delivered. So I think like this will allow new types of drugs or new types of insights to be gained. And this is the way I look at this, is it's like a new tool. So what was the thing that kind of allowed people to investigate the cell and make many scientific discoveries was like the microscope. And then with this new tool, like it unlocked all these different discoveries into science. Or with the telescope, it was a new tool that allowed us to explore the solar system. And the idea here is like with this new tool and data, maybe we will be able to discover new interactions or new insights into science, and potentially those could be monetized, and the people that helped discover those new ideas would all share in the benefit of that discovery. And so I think we can create sort of like a type 1 type of value creation here.
So cool. I love it. I love it. Again, if anyone's just joining, Michael's going to be giving a presentation along with CharmVerse co-founder Alex Poon at DeSci SF tomorrow. So if you are in the Bay Area, go check it out. It's going to be full of good stuff.
Yes, DeSciSF.xyz.
Thank you. So let's break it down, because I'm sure some of the listeners are interested in kind of getting involved in how this works more. So let's talk roles. So you have the curator, the scout, and the viewer, right?
Yeah, we have
So the curator is curating this database, and they're getting paid to do so.
Yes, exactly. So the curator is the person that starts the database. They're the one that has the idea. They develop the schema for the database. So they say, okay, we're going to have a row of what is your first name, a column of like your first name, a column of your last name, a column of your wallet address, whatever. And that's the person who starts the database, and then who's also, they're sort of like the founding father of that state. So they're the ones that get to write the constitution also around what types of content should or shouldn't be accepted into the database. And
so So are they going to be the ones kind of vetoing when the scout tries to add something?
Yeah, so the curator is the one who has final say in the decision that happens. And so the curator is the one that has the idea for the database. They sort of promote it. They form the schema for the database, and they're the final adjudicator in the types of content that should or shouldn't be in the database. And what's interesting is the curator, while it initially is one person, what you can also do, which is very interesting, is you can actually hook that up to a multi-sig. So you can hook your wallet up to Gnosis Safe, and instead of just one person being in charge of being the curator, you can have like a 2 of 3 thing. So maybe maybe it's a company that is starting that is the curator for a database, and all their employees are in this multi-sig. So maybe someone is sleeping at one point. You could just have another employee log in and be able to add or remove columns without the other people having to worry about it. So you're sort of distributing out the curator is like in many ways a black box. So it enables many different parties the curator is a black box that just takes in rows in the database and then spits out either to accept or reject them. And how the curator, how that black box makes that decision is sort of up to the people that started the database. It could be just one person. It could be a multi-sig where you need 2 of 3 signatures. It could be just one signature is good enough. It could also be an AI. So maybe an AI is the one that is making the decisions, and it just has the ability to sign off on things. So that's a way of like algorithmically curating large data sets instead of having to rely on people, or maybe it's a combination of AI and people doing it. But that's kind of the role of the curator.
All right. So then that takes us to the scout, and they can earn by adding to the database, but that earning depends on how much that piece of content is viewed.
Yeah. So there's the payout. The scout is the person. So the curator sets up the database, and then the scout is the person that contributes the data. So the data can either be original content, but it could also just be like, hey, I found this restaurant and I want to contribute it to your database. Or it could also be like, I drew this image. So it just depends on the database. And the idea is, yeah, so then when they contribute, they contribute along with a small bounty of like $1. And if their row is accepted, they get their $1 back. And if it's rejected, the $1 is burned. And then as the database monetizes, they get paid. So the reason you want to stake that $1 is because if you're accepted into the database, you get access to the revenue. You're a partial owner of you're a big contributor and partial owner of the revenue that database generates. And so if it generates $100 and you have 10 rows in there, out of 100, you get $10. And what's cool is like you have that because when you submitted it, you submitted an NFT and you own that data. You can sell that data. You can sell that NFT on OpenSea or wherever, and give someone else access to that revenue stream. So say that NFT is generating like $1 a month, and you want to go buy a car or something, you can get a loan based on the cash flow that NFT is generating, and get a loan for 10x what it's generating per year, and then and give someone else access to it. And yeah, so then the scouts contribute data and basically get paid proportionally based on how much it's viewed. It's sort of dependent. How they get paid is actually dependent on the parameters of the database. But some examples are you can get paid sort of fractionally based on views, or you can get just paid fractionally based on how the number of rows in the database, or There's other ways of doing it called like the sharp value. So maybe you contribute a very rare piece of data, and like no one else has this piece of data. It's something that adds a lot of insight into the database and creates a lot of utility. You can calculate sort of that utility using an measurement of information called the sharp value, and you can also get paid on that. So ultimately, long term, those are the sort of the three that we're playing with. But I'm sure there's many other ones that will allow people to do. But those are the sort of the three that we have now.
Cool. And then you have the viewer, right? That can pay to view the material.
Yeah.
Or they could also earn money to view the content and interact with it.
Yeah, exactly. So we also, like, if this database is generating revenue through ads or something, it makes sense to give a little bit of the revenue back to the people that are seeing the ads. They don't contribute the most work to it, but they still contribute an extremely valuable part. So we think also that they should get a percentage of the earnings by just like viewing the database. And this is sort of similar to like a BAT token, basic attention token in Brave or other things where the people that view the ad are also incentivized.
So how are these people getting paid? Are they getting paid in the token that they're needing to stake to add it? Are they getting paid in ETH, stable coins? How are they getting paid?
Yeah, it's USDC. So in order to view,
Okay.
like the database sort of monetizes in a couple ways. One is through advertisements, or one is through subscriptions, or at some point the money has to flow into the database. And then once it's coming into the database, then it's split up, and it's typically done with stablecoin. But you can also do it with other things that are a little bit more innovative around like impact certificates. So if someone wants to just say that they participated in like this large scale trial, but maybe this trial doesn't yet generate a lot of money, you can also issue impact certificates to people, which you can display to show that you were a core contributor to this project at an early stage.
Cool. So are you currently allowing new members? I feel like some of our listeners are definitely going to be curious about that after hearing this talk.
Yeah, so we're accepting new members. I would encourage you to follow us on DB_DAO on Twitter, and we're going to be posting a lot of. We're going to start having these more community-oriented databases, which allow people to curate through those, and so that's going to be very exciting. And we're going to be speaking about that in the coming days. So if you're interested, I would suggest to follow us there.
And I'll give that at a shout out towards the end as well.
I think you can just probably click me on Twitter right now.
Yes, you can join. You should just join right now, actually, and go check out dbdao.xyz.
Yes.
Because it has a ton of information on there. So is each database managed by DB DAO? How does that work?
Yeah, good question. So basically, we don't manage any of the databases. Those databases are managed by the person that curates the database. I think what DB DAO, like what we do is we create the software to allow individual curators to make curatorial decisions by themselves and with the larger community. And we personally don't think it's right for us to take the role of determining what should or shouldn't be included in a data set. So we leave those types of decisions. We hope that people basically create small, really well-focused databases to make those decisions. But we don't make those. It's kind of like we're kind of like Postgres and just like providing software for people to make those decisions.
Okay, cool. So how did DB DAO come about? How did you get this idea to do this?
Yeah, I just was looking at the landscape of of the different infrastructure that exists out there for building web applications. And I think there was also a part of it where it's like in the future, we don't want these sort of giant monolithic applications with unfocused content. We want to sort of more empower individuals to create these smaller, or maybe not smaller, but more focused databases of info. So like Twitter is great, obviously, for being this like broad town square type of thing. Of course, like the downside of that is that it leads to sort of a lack of focus. And maybe it would be nicer if you could go to a Twitter space, or not a Twitter space, but like a Twitter clone that was just about Web3. And you could just have that like echo chamber experience of talking about Web3, but then also, going to another echo chamber of people that are just interested in cars, and having these like focused and very domain specific web applications would lead to like a higher quality of discourse and higher quality content, instead of it just being spread so thin. So I thought just like at a high level, that would be beneficial for the way that would be to improve like how we interact online. And then everything else sort of like followed from there around how do we do that? We sort of incentivize people to contribute. We incentivize people to curate. We incentivize people to own their own data. A lot of the other sort of factors fell out, or not fell out, but like precipitated out easily once we sort of came up with this idea of wanting like more focused and higher quality discussions online.
Cool. So can you share with us any of the projects that you're kind of working with on these databases?
Yeah, so we're working with doing this like decentralized clinical trial. We're working with CharmVerse, obviously, to do like a way to do another type of sort of more broad clinical trial platform. We're working with we're working on another one with some doctors in the UK it's basically, there's this website called Up to Date, and it's sort of a closed system. But what it does is it's like Wikipedia, but for doctors. So if you go to a doctor and they sort of search your symptoms into this thing, and you get high quality, very technical content around, what the differential diagnosis is, and what they need to do, or what sort of they need to do. It's like Stack Overflow, but for doctors, sort of, or Wikipedia, but for doctors. And we're working on doing like more of a crowdsourced version of that around not alternative medicines, but different things like longevity, or things that might not have as much mainstream adoption, and but are still like being considered maybe pre-mainstream adoption. And we're looking to use DB DAO to crowdsource and incentivize doctors to contribute to that. And that's another one. We have people building a decentralized job board on top of us. So if you're a developer in Web3, and you're looking for a job, you can find it there. Or let's see what else. And someone else is developing a news application. So if you want to see credible news or non-clickbait news, you can do that, and they're sort of the curators to make sure that they fact check each article, each piece of information in the news article, to make sure that it's of high quality.
Wow. So really, it just spans across all different industries, and it just seems like it's going to be a game changer. Specifically, the healthcare system sounds like it could be a real game changer for that.
Yeah, exactly. I think I'm very excited about that one because it encourages high quality data, and also things that, it's creating a new data set and in like a structured way. that doesn't exist yet and is interesting I think will be helpful for people.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I'm really excited about this. I think this has been a really fun project for me to dig into and learn more about. I'm super excited to follow your journey. We have talked a bit about how people can follow the journey or become a part of your community. Like we said, you can just click on DB DAO and follow them, and you should right now. You can also go to dbdao.xyz. I think we are coming to the end of our time here. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know you have fun stuff to do in San Francisco while you're there. Just work.
Yeah.
But anything else you want to share for the roadmap on DB DAO before I let you
go?
Yeah,
we're just like working on like a lot of improving the usability, working on figuring out the incentives, working with developers. We have some interesting stuff around doing more interesting querying of the database. So you might want to query the database and get a ZK proof on that the data we return is correct, or we don't want to reveal too much of the information around what's in the database, but we want to reveal the results of a query to a database. So we're working on something there as part of the roadmap. And then additionally, another thing we have coming out somewhat shortly is like the ability to encrypt certain columns. So let's say you wanted to query the database for a name, and then you could query it, but then we encrypt a certain part of the database. Say you search the first name for Alex, and you see that user record come up, but the email address of Alex is encrypted. And in order to get the value that is returned there, you have to pay to decrypt that column for the email address so that you can contact them. So that's like a sort of an interesting thing around merging together the public data set, but then also encrypting certain private parts of it, and then being able to monetize the ability to access those parts, which I think will be really interesting for certain types of applications, or enable sort of people to see different parts of the data sort of based on how much they pay. And of course, all that money goes back to the person that contributed the data. So that's why you encrypt it and do it, so that they can have partial ownership of the value that their data creates. And I mean, ultimately, like the value in a system like this is that one individual piece of data isn't worth a ton. So if you just have one piece of data, you try and sell it, it's not worth too much. But if you have 10 or 100 pieces of data, if you have 100 pieces of data, say alone your piece of data is worth $1, and say when it's grouped together with 100 pieces of data, maybe it's worth $5 now individually, and the whole data set is worth $500, and each individual piece of data is worth $5 because it has the context and it allows for new types of insights to be generated here. So then what we do is we take that $500 and sort of give that back to the people that contributed it, and allow them to share in the profit. And that's kind of like, at the end of the day, the value that this system is creating is it allows for, the coordination costs for lots of pieces of data to be grouped together and then monetized. So
I mean, that's what Web3 is all about,
yeah.
Right? Ownership and being able to monetize that. And yeah, so it sounds like you're doing it right, and you're helping people in all sorts of industries.
Exactly.
So kudos to you. That's awesome. Like, great project.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I look forward to following the journey. I encourage everyone else to give all the follows, please. And yeah, I hope to see you in real life again soon.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate. Thanks for organizing this. I really appreciate it, and looking forward to seeing you again as well.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to chat with you. Yeah, keep doing what you're doing. Don't work too hard. Try to enjoy some of San Francisco, and And yeah, we'll be in touch for sure. But you have been a lovely guest. It has absolutely been a pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much,
Bye,
Michael.
and thank you again.
And everyone,
Bye.
bye. Everyone, tune in next Thursday. We're going to chat with some DAO members from a variety of public good DAOs, talk about their experiences within DAOs, the good, the pain points, and just the overall experience of being a part of a DAO. As always, I encourage you to check out CharmVerse if you haven't already. We're really excited about what we're building over here. Some of our newest features include our membership directory as well as our proposal builder. So go check it out. And thanks for joining us. And we'll see you next week.
Perfect. Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye.
Bye, Michael. Bye.